That was Bagari by Logan III here on 89.5 FM KCFV, the Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and yeah, we're still having some technical hiccups here at the station. I might have found a problem and things are exploding. So, good times for all. So, we're still trying to see if we can get this sorted out, but we're currently on track to have this become a lost episode here. So if it doesn't get fixed too soon, we'll just continue the show without it. But until then, here is Anything by Young Hayes here on 89.5 FM, KCFE The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for staying tuned to us. And please continue to stay tuned if you don't mind, because GameBabble Live will be back one way or another. Anyway, here's Anything by Young Hayes. Please enjoy. That was Rude Boy by Salt Cathedral here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Joe, and welcome back, finally, to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Apologies about the delay, and to anyone who is tuning in online, wondering what's up with this episode, yeah, we had some technical difficulties, and unfortunately, the, news segment and the new game releases got lost, but it's fine. Nothing too important there other than the fact that, yay, Gal Metal comes out today, and I care about that. Anyway, so, now the show can begin properly, and we can talk about the new video game news for this week and next week. Or, not next week, I don't know. For a while, we're talking about video game news, that's the point. Things got a little funky around here. So, where do we even begin, my good friends? Well, it would appear that Nintendo is not going to allow Red Dead Redemption 2 to have all of the hype. They have just announced that on November 1st, there will be a Nintendo Direct at 9 a.m. Because of course it's at 9 a.m. So, heck with sleeping after the Halloween parties, huh? Yeah, 9 a.m., November 1st, Nintendo Direct. They will be announcing the final characters for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Keep your fingers crossed, because I know a lot of people have a lot of speculation about who's in there. There's a lot of rumors and leaks flying around everywhere. And, yeah, here it is. The supposedly the final Smash Direct. Having said that, I still expect like one more character just before release, like the day before, because that was how Duck Hunt Dog was with Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. But even still, yeah, no, final Smash Direct. Well, then of course there's probably going to be DLC characters, but final Smash Direct. We're wrapping it up. This is going to be a deal. I know everyone's gonna be reacting to this one. I'm pretty excited to see what Nintendo does, because Nintendo do a lot of things. So yeah, that is something to be excited about, especially because Nintendo is the last true Japanese video game company. Yes. It is time to discuss the Sony censorship debacle, because goodness knows this is at the forefront of my mind. Got an episode I'm working on that. Because I don't think people recognize exactly how bad censorship is. That it isn't just, lewd anime games that get censored. It's lewd anime games that get censored first. Video games actually have a long history of erasing gay representation from Western releases of games. And sometimes this has even wrecked some of my favorite games. I love the Bust a Groove series, fantastic series of music games. Bust a Groove 2, its US release has no endings. The endings in the Japanese version are completely in English. I suspect this is because it revealed 2 gay characters in the endings. And the third game in the Bust a Groove series, Dance Summit 2001, didn't come to America at all. likely because there's an entire dancing team of drag queens. So, friendly reminder, and I know someone's going to go, oh, well, that doesn't happen anymore, it's 2018. No, it does. Yakuza 3 is going to have a quest involving a drag queen removed from both the Japanese and US release of the PlayStation 4 version of Yakuza 3. So, yes, it still happens. It absolutely still happens. To say nothing of the fact that, of various indie game dev studios who are being forced to censor their games, there's a long history of how bad censorship can screw things up. So no, it's not just head padding and anime lewdness that gets censored here. So, what's going on? Okay, fine. Video game censorship, it's bad. Censorship is bad in general. It happens a lot in video games. What's this got to do with Sony? What's going on? Well, perhaps the lewdest anime game on PS4, Senran Kagura, is getting a remake of the first game called Senran Kagura Burst Renewal. And, yeah, it was supposed to come out pretty soonish in America, but Xseed released a statement saying they had to delay the game because they had to remove intimacy mode from the game. This is a mode that has been in every single entry in the series since the Nintendo 3DS, since the original on the 3DS. It has been in every US release since then, and it has not caused any sort of problems or anything. And it is indeed in the Japanese release of this game, and it will be in the PC release of this game. But Sony is forcing them to remove it from the US release. Now, okay, fine, so Sony of America is being jerks again. No, that's Sony of everywhere. Come to find out, back in 2016, Sony moved their computer entertainment headquarters to California. And it was like in May they had a new president for Sony Computer Entertainment, so I might be blaming him. But either way, Sony Computer Entertainment is now based in California to such a degree that even Japanese developers have to write their submissions to Sony in English and submit them during US hours. So that's like 4 a.m. for them. And it is a company in California that is in charge of what games get released in Japan. There are some visual novels coming out for PlayStation 4, which have mentioned that they are only going to be released in Japan. There's no US translation planned. They're only being released in Japan, only on Japanese PS4 from Japanese developers, yet they still have to go through Sony of America over in California. And yeah, they have gotten really heavy with the censorship even for Japanese games. There are a couple of visual novels that have gotten releases on PC, PS4, Vita, and Switch. And the PS4 version is the most censored. Weirdly, the Vita versions are not so censored. Same thing with the Switch versions. Switch versions are lewder than the PS4 versions, which are ludicrous. The way that they are censoring these things, because they've just given up, they just have gigantic beams of light covering half the screen. That's how they're handling it, and it looks ridiculous. Sometimes it looks like the characters are being abducted by aliens, but this is definitely a problem because these games aren't being released in America. These are Japanese games released in Japan. Then Sony is not allowing this, and this is the kind of thing that really that can really mess with the release. Case in point, the next game in the Senran Kagura series, Senran Kagura VII, has been in development for PlayStation 4. It's been in development for a while, and they've been putting a lot of time and effort into this one. Because Senran Kagura used to be a very low-budget series. It exploded in popularity. They've churned out a lot of games really fast, and for 7, they're like, okay, we're going to slow down, we're going to back it up, and we're going to put some real time and effort into this next big mainline release for the Senran Kagura series. They're taking their time with it. So this has been in development for like a good bit now. And now all of a sudden, Sony is putting in these new policies, and that's going to mess with the development of the game. Now, it's of course here that everyone's just going to go, oh, well, release it on PC, you'll be fine. Indeed, Steam is now allowing you to download adult games as long as you click the button to say that you're an adult and confirm your age and stuff. You can go ahead and download adult games off of Steam. However, I think it is important to note a few things. Number one, Japan doesn't play games on PC. Just period. They don't. PS4 is going to be the central release platform for Senran Kagura 7. So chances are any censoring they need to do for the PS4 version will also apply to the PC version. And no, Japan just isn't going to suddenly get on board with PCs. Just PC gaming in Japan is a mess. But secondly, it's important to remember that Steam nearly started censoring games. Back in May, a bunch of games, which were already censored for Steam, got letters from Steam saying, hey, censor your games even more or we're pulling them off the marketplace. Some of these were from indie developers, at least one of which was a queer indie developer, and they were told that their games were getting pulled. And they were like, but this is our most successful game. This is what we do. We have gone out of our way to meet your standards, and now you're pulling our games. This could destroy our company. What in the heck? And they didn't really give them good information on what they need to do. Thankfully, Steam decided to reverse this decision and go in the radically opposite direction after some significant consumer backlash. Unfortunately, game journalists opted to defend this action in a stupid and roundabout way by saying, oh, well, Steam needed more quality control to get rid of all these shovelware games, even though it wasn't about shovelware games at all. It was about lewd anime visual novels, which Steam was trying to pull off of the store. And, yeah, it caused big problems for a lot of developers while that was going down back in May. It is important to remember that that happened. Let us not forget the past, lest we repeat it. So, yeah, this is a huge problem for everyone involved, because a lot of people have games in development that aren't going to meet these new standards that Sony has suddenly decided to impose. Marvelous Entertainment, the publisher for the Senran Kagura series, has indeed made an online petition for people to sign in order to try to get Sony to reverse this decision and loosen up their policies, because they're ridiculous. Because they are now more censorious by a large margin than Nintendo. And that's just awkward. Nintendo's really loosening up. They just allowed hot gimmick cosplay Jong on the Nintendo Switch in America, and I'm thankful for that. Because what harm is it really doing anyone? It's like all the arguments for the harm it's causing are very flimsy and not supported by anything. So yeah, that's about where we're at with that. I'm definitely going to have a video basically covering this exact topic again in further detail with more explanations and why I actually think this kind of censorship and the debacle we've put ourselves in is a part of the reason why Mother 3 hasn't gotten a U.S. release. That being the sequel to Earthbound, widely regarded as a phenomenal RPG. Yeah, probably never getting a U.S. release because they just don't know what to do about some of the characters in that game. Bit of a problem there. Yeah, and of course, it's important to note that this is not... I don't want to get too into detail, but let's just say that Sony is censoring video games isn't the only thing happening in the world of censorship. There are plenty of websites which have had their support pulled and have been taken off the internet because no one will host them, making it impossible to create alternatives to certain forms of social media. This is definitely a big problem. So, that's a thing. And yeah, that's not good. That's not good. So that's where we're at. It's still, like, again, this is a very weird thing. And what this means, as I said earlier, means Nintendo's the only real Japanese video game company now. Sony's American now. Sony is still a Japanese company, but Sony Computer Entertainment, all American, baby. So, yeah. Who's on favorite jump and switch to Nintendo? Me. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. So that's where we're at with that. Let's see, what else can I talk about real quick, like, before getting into anything super big? Well, why not game console sales? The PS4 has been one of the best-selling, not the best-selling, but it's been selling really, really well, with 86.1 million units sold now. But the Nintendo Switch, it hasn't been out that long, and it's creeping up there. It has sold 22.86 million, catching up with and surpassing the Nintendo GameCube's lifetime sales. So, good job, Switch. That's a lot of hackable consoles out there. If you're unfamiliar, the Switch is actually very easy to hack. It is a hardware-based issue, which is probably why Nintendo plans on having a new Nintendo Switch model out for next year, is to prevent people from hacking it. But there's already 22.86 million hackable Switches out there. That'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what they do with the new model. Like, if they're actually going to do anything. And speaking of new models, GameStop is trying to encourage people to trade in their old Switches for new Switches, but not the new model. Just get a new Switch because... And I completely know why. It's the dumbest promotion. They're, like, giving some kind of bonus for it. And I know why. They're like, oh, hey, the holiday season is coming up. People want used Switches. We don't have enough used Switches. Hey, anyone want to give us their used Switch, buy a new one? Because, GameStop gets like 100% of the profits from a used console sale, whereas when a new console sells, most of the profit goes to the company that originally created it. This wouldn't really be screwing over any big companies, because it'd still be, I don't know, actually. But it's a silly promotion. But, boy howdy, does GameStop want your Switches. Oh, that's silly. I just remembered. I probably shouldn't say their name. Anyway. I just find that promotion funny. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit of Pokemon news, why don't we? So, what's the name of that thing? Meltan. The new Pokemon Meltan can evolve into Melmetal. You can catch it right now in Pokemon Go, and there's a reason to, because as it turns out, your Melmetal or Meltan can be transferred to your Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee game. And speaking of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, Topeka, Kansas has renamed itself Topekachu, Kansas for a day, once again, to celebrate Pokemon. For anyone unfamiliar with the history of this, way back when Pokemon Red and Blue first launched in America, the big launch party was in Topeka, Kansas, which renamed itself to Topekachu, Kansas for the day. Now, that is the kind of thing that I hear about, and I remember, and I always wonder, how legit are you being with that? Because, if anyone was born on that day, does their birth certificate say that they were born in Topekachu, Kansas? That's what I want to know. That is the question I want to ask. Was anyone born into Pikachu? Good times. Let's see, any other Pokemon news? I mean, pretty excited for Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee the more I hear about it, because at first it was like, okay, so it's like a dumbed down Pokemon Yellow, but then they're adding in a bunch of extra bonus features and fun things, and it's like, oh, okay, so it is, like, kind of a dumbed-down Pokemon at first, and then the post-game has meatier content for the hardcore Pokemon nerds. And it's supposed to have, like, online play, I'm pretty sure, so that'll be nice. Just battle some Pokemon over the internet. Original 151 plus Metal and Meltan. Good times. I'm kind of excited for that. That could be fun. I haven't had a chance to really sink my teeth into a Pokemon in a while, so that'll be nice. Let's see. Also, Soul Calibur VI has announced that 2B from Nier Automata will be the next DLC character. That is the DLC guest character. She does have a stage, and you do get access to her costume bits when you purchase her. And Soul Calibur VI is still a widely praised mess. Like, this is really cool that you're doing that and all. But, yeah, no, this is a widely praised mess. Soul Calibur VI is the most awkward thing I've ever seen. As I mentioned on the previous show, they're recycling 11-year-old character models. They're recycling, like, 6-year-old character creation parts, but less. We have less characters than Soul Calibur 4 and 5. We have less character creation parts than Soul Calibur 5. And we actually have, this is a fun thing, a friend of mine was looking it over, we actually have the lowest number of stages in Soul series history. Soul Blade on the PS1 has more stages than Soul Calibur 6, and 2 of those stages are recycled from Soul Calibur 5. The game is fun to play, but I still drastically question the reversal edge mechanic, especially the fact that it's randomly shoved into the middle of combos. It's a thing where if you hit your opponent with this attack, then you play rock, paper, scissors, and it's really dramatic and stuff, and it's like, even if the mechanic does have some strategic use, it slows the game to a crawl for a good chunk of time just to do this big flashy animation. It definitely gets in the way of the game. And this is one of the big problems that Soul Calibur 6 has. And it's really awkward because everyone is hyping up Soul Calibur 6. Everyone is shilling for Soul Calibur 6. And let's not mince words here, that's what's going on. People are shilling for this game, and I understand it, because if this game doesn't sell, the Soul Calibur series is over. The legend will die. But at the same time, Namco gave this game no time and no budget, and the whole thing got completely rushed and thrown together as best they could. The saddest thing is, as rushed and thrown together and unfinished as this product is, it's still a more fleshed out fighting game than most of the fighting games coming out this generation. So that should give you an idea of the situation we're in. It's quite frustrating. But yeah, no, Soul Calibur 6 is very weird, because so many people are getting so hyped about it and really playing it and really getting invested in it. And it is a severely flawed game. You know what? We will get back to Soul Calibur 6's flaws and DOA 6's upcoming flaws after a break, though, because we got to take a break. So here is All My Friends by the Revivalists here on 89.5 FM, KCFV, the Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. And please stay tuned for more GameBabble Live if we get this show. That was Walk on Water by 30 Seconds to Mars here on 89.5 FM, KCFV, the Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So, before the break, we were talking about, well, first of all, we got Nintendo Direct on November 1st, 9 a.m. See you there. Sony is being very censorious after they moved their headquarters to California, so thanks a bunch for that, California. And Marvelous has a petition up to try to get them to reverse this, because it is even affecting Japanese games, which are now the most censored on PlayStation 4, as opposed to Switch and Vita, and of course PC. And before that, I mentioned that 2B is the next DLC character announced for Soul Calibur VI, next guest character. And I was going on a tirade about how Soul Calibur 6 is terrible. Well, not. They put a lot of time and effort and work into this game 11 years ago. That's the problem. Soul Calibur 6 is the reheated leftovers of Soul Calibur. They're recycling 11-year-old character models from Soul Calibur IV, but not giving us all the characters, selling some of them as DLC, like Tira. They, the character creation is just copy-pasted out of Soul Calibur V, but it's missing a ton of parts. I know, you've gone online, you've seen all these amazing characters that people have created in Soul Calibur VI. It has the best character creation system, except no, it doesn't. It's literally just Soul Calibur V's character creation system, except with less parts. And 2 of the stages, even, are just copy-pasted straight out of Soul Calibur V. On top of that, it has the lowest number of stages in series history with only 11. Even Soul Blade on PS1 had more. The only way to get less stages would be to play the 1.0 pre-Huang version of Soul Edge. That's the only one that has less stages than Soul Calibur 6. So, least stages, lowest number of characters since Soul Calibur 2. At least it has some single-player modes. At least the online is good. But I really question the Reversal Edge mechanic. I think it's a bad mechanic. I think the way it's implemented is bad. I do not understand its purpose. It slows matches to a crawl. And, yeah, people are shilling for this game super hard. But there's one thing I actually want to call some of these shills out on. And that's custom characters. See, you can actually play custom characters over the internet in a ranked match. And a lot of hardcore, super serious tourney players like Eris are salty about this because you can adjust the size of your custom character, and that affects how moves work. So combos that work on Nightmare won't work on a small character using Nightmare's moveset. And he's like, this is a perversion of the character. This isn't the way it should work, blah, blah, blah. And all these people are now up in arms. Oh, I can't buy this game now because of the fact that you can use custom characters in ranked matches, and they completely pervert the game. And, oh, this is such a big deal and an oversight. It's been there since Soul Calibur V. And they tell you this is the case on screen when you make a character. You don't need to make comparison combo videos. There's no argument here. When you make a custom character and you choose the size of your character, it says this will affect your move properties. And there is a little chart below each size thing saying what's plus and minus. Because if you make a character smaller, it makes them harder to combo. You know, they can get knocked out of combos faster. But I think they, I think they might fly higher, so they might be easier to combo as long as you don't knock them away. I'm not 100% sure on that. But as you make characters larger, they get more reach, as well as, I think, more power. I swear there was something on screen mentioning that they get a power boost as well. So this wasn't some design oversight that Soul Calibur VI has. This is an intentional feature. It's not a bug. And it's been there since Soul Calibur V. So if you think, oh, they're going to patch this out, it's such a design oversight. No! This is the way it has always been. And I'm actually... And also, I think if you choose, like, when you're choosing the height of your character, I think there's one that has a star over it, and that's the one that's, like, the same size as the actual character. And this says something. What it says is that perhaps we're looking at this wrong. It would appear, based on this character creation system, that there are 5 different sizes per character. And I think, now I'm just going off theory, I think that might be universal. I think it's not that, you know, each character has their own unique size and weight. It's that they fall into one of 5 different size/weight categories, considering one of them is starred and listed as being the default size for that class. What that means is when you're fighting a character that uses Nightmare's moveset, but is the size of Talim, you need to treat that character and what combos you do against them as though you're doing it against Talim. Because those are the sizes that are in the game. You need to look at it not based on moveset, but based on character size. Don't go, this is a reskinned Nightmare. You have to go, this is a small character using Nightmare's moveset. I treat it like a small character. Now, it would be entirely true to say that Nightmare's moveset is balanced around being a larger character, and that making a small character with Nightmare's moveset could imbalance the game. But, at the same time, I don't think it's enough to really ruin the game. And you know what? Hardcore high-level players, maybe you should investigate this. Maybe you should find out which custom character shape and size is actually the best in your tier lists. Maybe you need to multiply your tier lists by 5. I don't know. But that's the way things are. Now, it needs to be said. I completely understand you can't use custom characters in actual tournaments. You gotta use the default characters, and so if you're trying to practice default characters against default characters, that's going to cause problems when you keep fighting custom characters in ranked matches. And as such, a filter would be the right way to do this. Anything else would be the wrong way. Like, if you patch out the ability to use custom characters in ranked matches, Soul Calibur VI is done. Because custom characters are one of the biggest draws for that game, and ranked matches are more enjoyable than casual matches. Because casual match is, you make a room and you wait for people to show up. Ranked match is, you can be playing arcade mode or training mode and suddenly get a challenge. You just get matched up against someone, you do a match or two against them, and then you move on. It's much quicker than a casual match where you have to sit around and wait in a lobby for people to show up and wait your turn and so on. There are times where the casual matches are very enjoyable, like when you're playing in a room with friends. That's fantastic. But ranked matches are much quicker and easier, and people want to fight their custom characters online. So if you take custom characters out of ranked matches, Soul Calibur VI is super done. No one cares, garbage game, which it kind of already is, but more so. A lot of the support it gets will be abandoned, and I know the hardcore fighting game community will be like, oh, well, now it's a serious fighter. No one cares, sod off. The other option, of course, would be to have ranked with customs and ranked without customs as two separate pools, but that would also be bad because then you're splitting your player base. And that's the last thing you need. But a filter option would be the best option. If you turn on, so that way if someone's using a custom character and you turn on no customs, they just don't show up. And you only match up against people who are using the default characters. But if you don't care if it's default characters or customs, you're still in that same pool. And that would cause you to get... So that way, when everyone realizes they're not getting matches by using the default characters, they can turn off their filter and fight all the customs. Like they should. Because, see, here's the thing. I would always fight custom characters. I know it's a perversion of the combat system. I don't care. Because the most fun in Soul Calibur VI is fighting customs. If I could, I'd fight just customs. I get disappointed when people use the default characters, especially since they're recycled character models anyway. I like it when I see what kind of crazy creations people come up with, even when they're stupid, even when they're the rainbow cube. I want to fight people's custom characters. And yeah, it makes me happy. I like this kind of crap. And so yeah, if I could, I'd have a fighting game of all custom characters, which I know would be horribly unbalanced. I've got a system in my mind, but no one's gonna make it. But yeah, I'm just amused because there are so many people who are up in arms about this, and I'm like, it's been this way for years. Soul Calibur V had this, and you're just now catching on because Eris complained about it? They tell you this in the character creation screen. Do you not know how words work? Can you not read? Might I invite you to Florissant Valley Community College? We have good courses on reading. It can help you. Reading is fundamental, people. It blows my mind, and it shows just how oblivious everyone is about Soul Calibur. They remember it as being that one game they played once, and they're happy to play it again, and they're oblivious to the fact that they are playing 11-year-old reheated leftovers. It's stupid, it's an embarrassment, and I enjoy calling people out on this. The unfortunate thing is Dead or Alive 6 is going to be the same thing. By the way, Christie's been confirmed for Dead or Alive 6. Yay. But the game is... it has so many problems it doesn't matter. Obviously, we've heard about them supposedly toning down the lewdness, but then they're cranking it back up, but then Sony might force them to tone it back down again. It's in a weird situation right now in terms of that, but that's not even what matters. What matters is, as usual, they are recycling character models from DOA 5. Just making some tweaks to them. As usual, they are recycling movesets. But, unusually, we are losing a hefty chunk of those characters. Huge swath of them are going to be cut. Like, it's going to be cut down to 25. We've already confirmed that 2 characters are DLC that were formerly in the game. Nyo Tengu and Phase 4. Nyo Tengu being a pre-order bonus, and Phase 4 being a special edition only thing. So... And on top of the fact that it's just hitting the reset button on everything, the fact there's not going to be a tag mode, which has been a feature since DOA 2. It's been in every DOA game. It practically doubles the value of the game. But, no, we're just going to cut that out because we want to focus more on the single player. And I have no faith in their stupid, what is it called, Fatal Strikes mechanic. They have a button you can mash to cause you to do an uncounterable combo. If the first hit hits, the rest of it can't be countered. Sounds like a win button to me. And they've outright said this is to make the game appeal more to casuals, even though they are simultaneously saying this is the most hardcore and serious DOA ever. And you don't need to make DOA appeal to casuals, because it's very easy to play on a casual level. People normally call it a button masher, but now we have a mashable button. It's Soul Calibur 6 all over again. Oh, hey, we added in this button that causes a flashy thing to happen for the casuals, while simultaneously providing you with a recycled game with less content. The difference is that with Soul Calibur 6, where do you go back to? Soul Calibur 5 was also a contraction pack. It was also just the previous game with less content, but at least it plays faster. Then Soul Calibur 4, which has a lot of content and is the most gorgeous entry of the series, most gorgeous game of the previous console generation, does not play well because it's too slow. That's an issue. It also had terrible netcode. So then you go back to Soul Calibur 3, but that had a bunch of bugs because it was released straight to console, did not have an arcade release to work out those kinks, and they are numerous. So you have to go back to Soul Calibur 2, which the, HD port of it sucks, so you need to play it on your PC, and through questionably legal means, but then supposedly the netcode's great. I'm hearing good things about the Dolphin netcode. So, there's that. And that's the problem. Soul Calibur 2 is still the pinnacle of the series. It's when it had the most moves. Soul Caliburs 1 and 2. Friend of mine was actually breaking it down. He was like, he was just theory crafting on how different games had different concepts, and he was like, yeah, Soul Calibur 1 is all about movement. The movement is the fastest in that game. The arenas are the smallest, so spacing and placement and movement matters more. And 2 is more about strategy. So that makes Soul Caliburs 1 and 2 the best entries in the series. It's a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, Soul Calibur can't reclaim that former glory if Namco doesn't give them time and a budget. Which they won't, because they hate Soul Calibur. Because the funniest thing is, in this gigantic maelstrom of shilling and hype for this reheated leftover of a game, there are a number of people outright saying, I am a Tekken player, I like this more than Tekken. This is more fun than Tekken. The movement is better than Tekken. The 8-way run is brilliant. And that's the truth of the matter. That's what's really going on here. Is Namco knows Soul Calibur is better than Tekken. And they don't want to have to deal with that. Now, the funny thing is, it doesn't really take away from the audience. Because a lot of people play both Tekken and Soul Calibur. Anyone who says Soul Calibur is Tekken with weapons is an idiot. They play radically differently. And some people, a lot of people, play both Tekken and Soul Calibur. Some people prefer Tekken, don't play Soul Calibur. Some people prefer Soul Calibur, don't play Tekken. And they're made by two different teams. So, Namco has nothing to lose by having two of the best 3D fighters on the market. But they're too protective of Tekken, and so they keep cannibalizing the poor Soul Calibur series. They keep pulling people off the project, cutting funding, cutting development time, shoving games out the door. A lot of this also has to do with the fact that Soul Calibur is only popular in America. It did not catch on in Asia, which is a shame. But this is a problem, okay? And that's why Soul Calibur 6 is a mess. Oh my goodness, I've spent this entire time period talking about Soul Calibur 6, and I have so much more ground to cover. Whew. I might have to save some of this for next week. Wow. But there's a lot for me to complain about with Soul Calibur 6, and I feel like I'm the only one doing it. Just like I was with Soul Calibur 5. Anyone who thinks that, no, Jell, you're wrong, you're just being overreactive, mark my words, unless this game gets some crazy patches that do some drastic changes, in about 2 years, everyone's going to regard Soul Calibur 6 as another one of the crappy ones. Possibly even the second crappiest. We will find out. Because that's what happened with Soul Calibur 5. I remember when that game came out, and I said, this is a contraction pack. This is Soul Calibur 4 with less content. It has less moves, it has less characters, it has less modes, and people are like, oh, Jell, you're being stupid. Soul Calibur 4 is bad. Soul Calibur 5 is a superior game because you move faster. It's not that recycled. And people were talking about how it was this great return to form for the Soul Calibur series and how good it was, and everyone loved it, and they ran tournaments for it. And then, like 2 years later, everyone abandoned it, and it's one of the crappy ones again. I'm just saying. Now, having said that, that's partially Namco's fault, because Namco, in the final patch, patched out the best thing about Soul Calibur 5, which was the movement speed. They reduced the movement speed in the final patch, effectively ruining the game. And it sucks because you can't go back just one patch before. You're either playing the launch version with the good movement, but probably plenty of issues, or the one that has all the bug fixes, but terrible movement. Good times for all, except not. Anyway, it sounds like it's time to take a break. So here's Catch a Body by Livia featuring Quavo here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more. That was Something Human by Muse here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. And this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. And, before the break, I spent probably nearly an hour complaining about Soul Calibur 6, which puts us behind schedule, so I have some serious beef with Soul Calibur 6. I swear, if it didn't have some single-player content, I would be, I'd be a lot harsher for it. There'd be no reason to purchase it. Anyway, so let's speedrun the rest of the news before I talk about how My Hero 1's Justice turned out. So let's see. First of all, a prototype Wiimote and Nunchuck for GameCube is up on a Japanese auction site. This is an actual Nintendo prototype showing the Wiimote and Nunchuck for the Nintendo GameCube. It was originally going to perhaps be a peripheral for it before they just decided to make it. Actually, that's a good question. Either it was going to be a peripheral for it before they decided to build an entire console around it, either A, or B, and this is just as likely, it's worth mentioning, maybe this was how they prototyped it. They didn't really have the console itself ready, so they made Wiimotes and nunchucks for GameCube to test out the concept. It's assuming they tested the concept at all. Anyway, moving right along. Castlevania Requiem, which is a collection of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night on PS4, is indeed based on the PSP version that came packaged with the Castlevania Rondo of Blood remake, which makes a lot of people say, why didn't you just straight port the remake instead of porting the remake's unlockables but not the remake itself? Personally, I hate the remake, but I do agree with the sentiment. But yes, so it is just the unlockables from the remake. So Symphony of the Night has the new voice acting. It also has the PSP version of Maria. For those unfamiliar, Symphony of the Night had a Sega Saturn release in Japan that gave us a new sprite for Richter and added playable Maria, and in that version, Maria did Kung Fu, and you did Street Fighter motions to do special attacks. This was declared non-canon. Koji Igarashi, the guy who was in charge of Castlevania for most of that time period, did not like it, and when people were demanding playable Maria on PSP, he went ahead and made an all-new version of Maria just for the PSP version, based closer on her Rondo of Blood version, i.e. throwing birds, which turned out great, but it is kind of a shame that we don't have Kung Fu Maria. However, I am hearing Castlevania Requiem's PC engine emulation on Rondo of Blood is not so hot. I do not have details, I've just been told that it is a bit bad. Moving on, Team Sonic Racing, the sequel to Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, sort of, it's made by the same people, has been massively delayed. It was set to come out before Christmas. Now it's not coming until May. So that's like a good half-year delay for the game, which at the same time I understand, because every time I look at Team Sonic Racing, I go, I don't get it. Because Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed was so freaking good, I don't know how you top it. It's one of the greatest racing games ever made, and if you've never played it, it's on Steam. It's on nearly every console, except the modern ones. Yeah, Wii U, 360, PS3, Vita, 3DS, I think? I don't know, those ones were a little weird, though. But, yeah, it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest racing games ever made. I don't know how you follow that up, and Team Sonic Racing looks like a massive downgrade in every respect, so I don't blame them for delaying it. Moving on, Jump Force is adding Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star and Ryo Saiba from City Hunter, which is a surprising thing. Apparently City Hunter was actually really, really popular in Japan. In America, no one cares about it. I mean, at least outside of the theme song. The City Hunter has an amazing theme song. But even then. Meanwhile, China has completely freezed new game release approval due to BS bureaucracy. Basically, the Chinese game approval system they had in place was supposed to be a stopgap measure that was supposed to last temporarily. They never came up with a better solution, and now they have canceled their stopgap measure in order to force themselves to come up with a better solution, and they haven't. So, Chinese game releases are currently a mess. Meanwhile, Street Fighter V has gotten an update, added a bunch of things, including reduced input lag, so that's good. Let's see. Sega Ages. They're releasing Sega Ages releases on Switch, and they are looking into Saturn and Dreamcast games. They want to do that. They say they have Dreamcast emulation running quite well, but they don't know if they want to do emulation or if they want to do full source code ports. They're also shocked by how many people want Jet Set Radio, because that, won their big pull. Moving on, Medieval. We've heard that that there was going to be something new with Medieval. It is going to be a full-on remake, not a remaster. Official word from the devs. They mentioned this on a podcast. Meanwhile, in Yakuza 3, Tanimura, one of the playable characters, is getting a new character model. This is because his voice actor and likeness has retired from the entertainment industry. And perhaps strangest of all, Tommy Tallarico has bought the Intellivision name off of Mattel. He's got a company now called, like, Intellivision Entertainment, and they are making their own console called the Intellivision Amico, which we've seen a bunch of this happen where people take old names and try to re-release it to cash in on nostalgia. You know, there was the Retro VGS being rebranded as the Coleco Chameleon, remember that? And then there's, of course, the Atari VCS, which is still incredibly questionable. But this one actually shows promise. We have someone from the industry actually involved in it. We have a bunch of people from the industry actively involved in it, including people like some old Nintendo marketing people and other folks who have worked in the industry and done development in the industry. And they've gotten together and they're trying to produce this console. They claim it will be out October 10th, 2020. It's going to focus mostly on 2D games. The idea is that the console is going to be cheap. All games will be cheap downloads. And more than that, you'll also be able to use phones as controllers if you want to. It will have its own controllers, but if people don't have controllers, they can just sync their phones up to it. And the entire shtick, this is the thing that makes it interesting, it's actually not just this is some kind of crazy gimmick nostalgia console. The Intellivision Amico's entire shtick is that every game on it will be E-rated. Which, at first, you roll your eyes and groan, but number one, you can make a good game and have it be E-rated. I know, I was just talking about censorship and lewd Japanese games, but hear me out here. It is true to say that there aren't enough E-rated games out there, that some people are starved for some quality E-rated games. They need a system they can count on. That's generally been Nintendo's market, and in many ways it still is Nintendo's market, but at the same time, Nintendo isn't 100% safe. The Intellivision Amico is trying to be the new Nintendo, basically. Every game is E-rated. They're going to have, massive quality control. They claim that every Amico game is going to be, Amico exclusive, and that they are going to focus on quality over quantity. It is worth mentioning this could backfire horribly. Quality control can be a bad thing, because the ability to detect the difference between a good game and a bad game is actually very hard. They have said a lot of questionable things about the nature of this system that I'm not sure that I like, with their, I think they actually have, inclusive gaming for everyone as a trademark for the system. And that could mean some really stupid things if you read between the lines. The Intellivision, but at the same time, it could mean good things. The Intellivision Amico basically could be a brilliant niche console for younger gamers, or it could be a complete dumpster fire. We'll find out in 2020. Moving on, I promised you the PS1 Classics game release list. So, if you're unfamiliar, Sony is making their own little mini console to compete with the NES and SNES Classic, and possibly the N64 Classic if that comes out. A lot of people are really hoping Nintendo surprises us with an N64 Classic so we can have an N64 Classic versus PS1 Classic. Although, to be fair, the N64 came out later than the PS1, so we're still reliving the 90s. So, what games are on the PS1 Classic? Honestly, though, it needs to be said, the PS1 Classic is very, very questionable as a system. What we've seen of the video output from it does not look very good, and at the price tag, I don't know. And a lot of these games can be obtained from used game stores on the stupid cheap, and you can play them on your PS1, PS2, and PS3 just fine. So, it is questionable. It is a very questionable system. But what games are actually coming? Well, first of all, and most surprisingly, Battle Arena Toshinden. Yeah, they're putting that on there. Let me tell you, that game does... I've been trying to get a retrospective of that series off the ground for a while. Believe it or not, there are 15 Toshinden games. Long story, but Toshinden, nowadays it's regarded as some obscure, weird, crappy fighting game, and it does not hold up. It does not stand the test of time. But it was the system seller for the PS1. The character Sophia from Toshinden was the PS1's original mascot for the US. That was the killer app. That was the system seller. And it was huge from 1995 to 1996. And then Toshinden 3 came out and the whole thing sank. Yeah, they produced like 3 games in the span of like a year. 2 years, kinda. Yeah. It's a long story. Toshinden has a reason why it was popular. It was basically the third 3D fighting game. You had Virtua Fighter, you had Tekken, then you had Toshinden. Technically, you got both Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, and then Tekken, and then Toshinden. But still, Toshinden came out at the end of the month Tekken 1 was released. It was the first 3D fighter with fireballs that you could throw a Hadouken in it. First 3D fighter to do that, with polygons anyway. I mean, there's Balls 3D and there's Dark Edge, if you want to go non-polygonal 3D fighters that use sprite scaling. If we want to get technical, and I'm a technical guy who does that. But in terms of 3D polygonal fighters, remember, this was the 3D boom. Everything had to be 3D, everything had to be polygons, or it was old. And this was the first polygonal fighter to let you throw a fireball. It was the first polygonal fighter with a proper air game. The jumps were a bit on the floaty and slow side, but you jumped in the air and you had air attacks. And most importantly, it was the first 3D fighter that had sidestepping. Technically, Tekken 1 and Virtua Fighter 1 weren't 3D fighters, they were 1D fighters. They barely had any jumping, and you couldn't really sidestep in them. It was like a side effect of the moves you did. Toshinden was the first one that had these roll buttons. So, Toshinden is unique in that regard. When you couple that with the phenomenal character designs and fantastic music and the sheer amount of hype behind it, it's no wonder that from 1995 to 1996, Battle Arena Toshinden was more popular than Virtua Fighter and Tekken and went toe-to-toe with Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. And then Toshinden 3 came out and the whole series crashed. Which is kind of funny because Toshinden 3, in retrospect, is actually one of the better entries in the series. And dang it, I am getting caught up on Toshinden technicalities. See, here's the thing. I love the series because I love the character designer. Tsukasa Kotobuki. It's actually not Masami Obari. Obari just directed the anime. But I love the Toshinden series. On paper, it's just most of the games are bad, except the Game Boy one. Game Boy one's good. Anyway, okay, PS1, classic game release list. Let's go. Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto 1, Intelligent Qube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Revelations Persona 1, one of the most butchered games in history. Now you have a cheaper way to experience all the butchering for yourself. Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and Wild Arms. Ironically, Persona 1 is perhaps the most interesting entry in there because it later got a PSP release that unbutchered it, but that means that you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get your hands on the original horrifically butchered version of Persona 1. And when I say horrifically butchered, I mean they tried to claim that Japan was California. They actually whitewashed all the characters except the one they made black. So they changed the names of friggin' everything. It was, and half the game got cut out. Because there's this one point where the game famously splits, and you can go on the Ice Queen quest, which completely changes the second half of the game. Yeah, no, they just dummied that out, never bothered to translate it. So, PSP version added that back in. But yeah, original US version was half a game. I think the reason why Atlas is such a better localization company today is because of the backlash they got for what they did to Persona 1. I will also tell you Persona 1 and 2 are very different games from Persona 3, 4, and 5. To the point where Persona 3, 4, and 5 really should be called like Shin Persona. Except we might have too many Shins, so maybe they should go with Neo. Either way, if you're wondering about the Japanese PS1 classic, though... Wow. Yeah, okay. If you're wondering about the PS1, the Japanese PS1 classic, it has a slightly more interesting release list, arguably a better release list, so I think we might be importing this sucker, but Japanese one has Arc the Lad 2, Armored Core, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Final Fantasy VII International Edition, G Darius, Gradius Gaiden, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Persona 1, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Parasite Eve, Ridge Racer Type 4, Saga Frontier, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Tekken 3, Battle Arena Toshinden, Wild Arms, and Devil Dice. So, yeah. Slightly more interesting release list for Japan. Whew. There we go. Bringing us to the last thing before I can talk about My Hero 1's Justice and how it's alright. So, mini arcades. A while back I mentioned that I felt these were going to be the big new thing. Little miniature arcade machines. And I'm proven right, at least partially, as now they're starting to show up at GameStop. And I don't mean the arcade one-ups, which, by the way, I hear the buttons on those aren't that great. Some people are still, buying them in order to turn them into RetroPie arcade cabinets. But the arcade one-ups are kind of a you get what you pay for thing. They're cheap, smaller arcade machines. But no, when I say mini arcades, I mean, literally He-Man figure-sized arcade machines that you can play. I walked into a certain big box store and found 3 different varieties of them back during the summer, and I'd seen some of them floating around earlier than that. And I picked a bunch of them up and I messed around with them, and they're kind of neat. It's worth mentioning that they are not the actual arcade versions of the game. They're the NES versions. I don't know why people don't use Sun Plus chips with the arcade versions. Maybe they'll start doing that now that AtGames is kind of putting arcade ROMs on things, but whatever. Point is, they're NES on a chips, displaying on a little screen in a little miniature arcade cabinet. A lot of the appeal is the cabinet itself. The My Arcade brand has really solidly built cabinets that actually have the original arcade art all laminated and stuff. They're not 100% accurate in terms of shape, but, they look like little miniature arcade machines. But on the flip side, the screen resolution is a bit off, and so the images get a little stretched and warped in some weird ways. Some games look fine, some games don't look so fine. Dig Dug, you barely notice it on, but it's flagrantly obvious on Bad Dudes. Which, yes, there is a miniature Bad Dudes cabinet out there. You see what I'm talking about. But they're not the only one. Basic Fun's Arcade Classics were also a thing. They have the cheapest build quality, but they put the most effort into the ROMs. As even though, once again, the screen is warped, for Rampage, they added in Ralph, who was a missing character in the NES version. So that was interesting. And then there's the tiny arcades, which are little keychain-sized arcade machines, which have to have their own custom ROMs in order to fit the incredibly small screen size. They're not very practical, but they are playable to at least some degree. Anyway, the update is that it appears the second wave of these things has come out. The My Arcades are starting to be carried at more stores, and we're starting to see a greater variety of them actually make it off the internet. The Basic Fun Arcade Classics have released 2 new ones, Ms. Pac-Man, which is actually their own custom build. It's not just the NES version of Ms. Pac-Man. It actually lacks the intro sequence. The title screen is like a JPEG of the Ms. Pac-Man logo, and when you press start, it makes the sound of a coin falling in the machine, but at the same time, they actually scaled the screen properly, so that way it doesn't get stretched, except for the ready. The text that says ready is stretched, but everything else is perfectly fine in the new Basic Fun Ms. Pac-Man. But the most interesting thing is the other new one they released is Fix-It Felix Jr., as in the made-up arcade game from Wreck-It Ralph. They have made a miniature arcade machine of this. It's about to get stupider, though, because it is not the arcade version of the game. Disney did make some promotional arcade machines of it, and the big difference is that the arcade version has a jump button, and Felix actually jumps between ledges, and it has the overly long intro sequence from the movie. That's not in this one. This one is based on the Flash version where Felix just teleports between the windows. But what this means, because that thing can't run Flash. So what that means is that they made an inferior NES port of Fix-It Felix Jr. for the sole purpose of making these mini arcade cabinets. Meanwhile, the tiny arcades, which are the keychain-sized ones, have come out with Galaga, Dig Dug, and Frogger. So there's 3 more of those floating around out there. Meanwhile, a bunch of other companies are hopping in on the action, and a certain online retailer is selling all sorts of weird, more bootleg-esque ones. I just picked one of those up the other day, and I'm very amused by it. I might have to find a way to stream that, because that one actually has a video out. Very nice. And yeah, I need to go find some malls in the area, because I would bet money there are going to be kiosks in malls selling these things. I need to go check. Anyway, though, we need to take a quick break before we wrap up the show with my opinions on My Hero 1's Justice. So here is Wounded Animal by The Motor League here on 89.5 FM KCFB The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for just... That was Bed by Nicki Minaj featuring Ariana Grande here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jel, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So we are wrapping up the show, but don't worry, if you've missed the show, you could just go onto YouTube and search up GameBabble Live Archive, and you should eventually slam face first into at least one of my episodes. Unfortunately, YouTube does not let me have custom names on channels unless they have over a certain number of subscribers now. And there's actually some other GameBabble out there with 2 guys named Phil and Rick. There's a space in it. So search GameBabble without a space, and you should find one of my 60-plus episodes. Anyway, you know what's really annoying about having the Nintendo Direct on November 1st? It means you can be easily tricked because, there's a bunch of Halloween announcements for the 31st. Yeah, apparently Undertale is teasing something on PC for the 31st, and that's one of those things where at first you think, oh geez, are they seriously going to put an Undertale character into Smash? Which, honestly, I hope they don't, because Smash should be for, like, frigging legends of gaming, not just random indie characters. I mean, as much as I've loved Shantae since the beginning, since, like, 2 or 3 years before the beginning, I actually don't want Shantae in Smash. I think, I think it would be awkward, and she doesn't really belong there, you know? It'd be a guest character, and Smash should be reserved for Legends or Nintendo characters. But, whatever. Either way, it is time we talk about My Hero 1's Justice. I've been talking about this game quite a bit because, of course, My Hero Academia, great anime, I'm loving it. But when the video game was announced, a lot of people were super excited because, oh yeah, it's going to be a cel-shaded anime fighter, and Dragon Ball FighterZ just came out, and oh, this is going to be so great. And then the moment they saw it was an arena fighter, people immediately declared that My Hero's 1's Justice was a garbage game. They're like, oh, it's crap, it's terrible, oh, it's just a reskin of Naruto. Nah. And here's the thing you have to remember. Licensed anime games that are so good that you don't have to be a fan of the anime to love them are few and far between. They happen like once a decade, you know. There's Capcom's old JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Fighter. There's UN Squadron, which was based on the anime Area 88. Yo, it's rare that you get these games where you don't have to be a fan of the anime to really enjoy the game. Dragon Ball FighterZ is one of the best fighting games of this generation, whether or not you like Dragon Ball. It's a really good game, and even if you don't like it, you can't deny that it is pretty darn good to at least some degree. So expecting My Hero 1's Justice to be another Dragon Ball FighterZ is completely impossible. But what annoyed me is everyone's like, oh, it's just going to be a reskin of Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, except that's made by CyberConnect 2. And My Hero 1's Justice is being made by Viking. King is the company that has pretty much stealth-devved the entire Arena Fighter explosion. And they have quite the legacy under their belt. They made Gundam Versus. They made the cult classic GameCube game Gotcha Force. They made Gunslinger Stratos. They made all these games. They made Rise of Incarnates back on PC. They have a legacy and a pedigree behind their products. So I actually had a lot of faith in My Hero 1's Justice. The only thing is, most of their games are very projectile-based, and My Hero 1's Justice is very melee-based. So I was curious how that was going to turn out. Unfortunately, the answer is, the game is certainly not bad. Controls are tight, responsive, snappy. You could go in there, hit some buttons, flashy things will happen. It feels pretty darn good. But in terms of, like, deeper combat, My Hero 1's Justice definitely falls short. To be blunt, there just aren't enough moves on the characters, and the moves they have aren't varied enough. A lot of the moves, I'm like, I don't have a normal use for this. I don't have a way to use this. It's a lot of melee combat, and most of the melee combat is just dashing in and doing your basic combo. Maybe I've missed something, but I am not seeing a lot to the game. It is also horribly unbalanced, as top tier is Frop tier. Yes, Froppy is the best character in the game due to having a 70% damage combo that is incredibly easy to do. But yeah, the game is just, it's lacking in moves. A lot of the problem is that they put, part of the problem is the fact that they were thinking about the Nintendo Switch version, which apparently is crap anyway, so they don't use L2 and R2. And more than that, they focus too much on having flashy super moves, and so those took away their options for normal moves. But even then, the normal move selection is pretty terrible. Again, go back to Froppy, Suyu. Like, her triangle button attack is just her shooting her tongue out, and then her circle button attack is her shooting her tongue out at an upward angle. They're like practically the same move, and you're working with a small move list anyway. You know, it's square, square in direction, triangle, triangle in direction, circle, circle in direction. And then block and square. Block and triangle, block and circle, and block and triangle and circle simultaneously are all super moves. They should have used more simultaneous button presses. Have some square and triangles, triangle, circle, circle, and square. They should have had those in there, but they didn't. So that was a missed opportunity. It's all a shame because it plays good, it looks good, it's enjoyable. If you want the anime and you want a playable version of that, My Hero 1's Justice won't disappoint you. But if you want a fighter with some meat on its bones, it's a little bit lacking. Not bad, but not that great either. When push comes to and it's especially a problem because it's like when push comes to shove, Castlevania Judgment was a better game. That's because Castlevania Judgment is a highly underrated and overlooked game due to its bizarre character designs. It's widely regarded as a terrible game, but it's actually really good. I bring that up, of course, because I'm hoping either tonight or tomorrow as sort of a Halloween thing, maybe I'm going to attempt to play that online with a friend or two. Introduce them to the wonderful world of Castlevania Judgment and how fun it is, because I think it's really fun. I think it's a good game. I think it's underrated. But yeah, I bring that up. What does Castlevania Judgment have to do with My Hero 1's Justice? They're the same genre. They have very similar gameplay. They actually use the exact same camera mechanics. But yeah, it's that. That about sums things up for today. I was going to talk about Maple Story 2, which has recently finally launched in America. Apparently it came out 3 years ago in Korea. I was paying no attention to the game. I paid a little attention to it when the closed beta test started, and I was like, I guess that looks pretty fun. And then I found out that you could make your own, custom things in it, including custom clothes. And I've kind of spent more time sitting there in Photoshop making custom outfits for Maple Story 2 than I have actually playing the game. So I can't say too terribly much about it. But thus far, it's been fun. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on Maple Story 2. I'm waiting for it to fall apart. I will say I'm not a big fan of the melee combat. I'm loving the assassin, though. So we will see. Maybe next week I will have more experience with it and can tell you how it's turning out. But for everyone who's suffering from MMORPG fatigue, I feel you. I feel you. Not a single one of my friends wants to play this game with me, and I completely understand. Ooh, but anyway, that sums it up for today's episode of GameBabble Live. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you again next week. Once again, Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. If you missed the show, you can check it out online by searching up GameBabble Live Archive on YouTube. Remember, there is no space between Game and Babble. If you put one there, you'll just find Phil and Rick, whoever they are. Good luck on your GameBabble, which shows up more easily than mine for some reason. I think YouTube just hates me. Anyway, that about sums it all up. Thanks again, and I will see you next week. Until then, here is Tidal Wave by Portugal the Man, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and see you again.